There is one truth about the Orlando Magic for the rest of the season. This is their core, whether they like it or not. Today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is February 18th, 2026. My name is Philip Rossreich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com, credentialed member of the Orlando Magic media since the 2012 season. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, why the Magic's trade deadline said a lot about this team and what they have to prove the rest of the season, why this end of the season isn't just a throwaway or a lame duck. We'll make that argument coming up here in just a moment. Plus, where the Magic are going to make their move out of the All-Star break. The two spots in the schedule that I have pegged as big turning points for the Magic. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. First, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right re-upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. You can make Locked On Magic even bigger part of your day by being one of our Orlando Magic dailies, our everydayers who listen 5 days a week, who listen on the weekends when we do our weekend episodes, who make us part of your regular podcast rotation, to make us your first listen of the day, who are part of our everydayer club. We want to thank you for making this Locked On Magic community such a great and growing community, and we want to thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. It's your team every day. We are getting ready for the last 29 games, a 29-game sprint to the finish. And look, regardless of where the Magic were record-wise or where the Magic might be in the standings, we'd be talking the same conversations. It's about finishing strong. It's about getting yourself ready for the playoffs, whether you were climbing, trying to fight off and win home court advantage, or whether you're trying to do what the Magic are trying to do and climb from the 7th seed to the 6th seed and avoid the play-in. It's I said this a bunch yesterday. It's not about the other teams. Definitely keep tabs on Locked On Sixers, Locked On Heat, and Locked On Raptors. We're going to be fighting those teams the rest of the season, and the Magic very much could fall to 8th just as easily as they could rise to 6th. Yeah, I think they got about the same lead. I think they might be a half game up on Miami. They got games in hand and the tiebreaker on them. But the Magic control their own destiny. At the end of the day, if Orlando wins games and they play well throughout the end of their schedule, they are going to find themselves in a position they want to be. Now, like I said yesterday, is it the position the Magic wanted to be in the preseason? It probably won't be. The Magic probably won't have home court advantage. They probably won't be in a first-round series where it's just like, oh, yeah, we're the favorites. The Magic are the favorites to win that series. Everything is going to be fought for and worked for. And look, do I think the Magic would have a fair shot at beating the Knicks would be tough. The Celtics would be tough. The Pistons would be tough. The Cavs would be tough. There does appear to be a top 4 that is going to be pretty hard to fight against. Now, if Toronto could climb to 3, do I like the Magic's chances in a 3-6 against the Raptors? Sure. No offense to Toronto. But at the end of the day, the Magic are going to have to fight for everything that they want. We are already starting to go through the motions, though, of doing an autopsy on the season. And I don't think that's necessarily the wrong thing to do. If you're ready to check out on the season and say, oh, they failed to meet expectations, what's the point of being the 6th seed and losing the playoffs again? I would say the act of finishing the season strong and seeing this team's potential is worth the doing. But you're right. We are going to hit this offseason. We're going to ask some very big questions. We already anticipate that the Magic will potentially move on from Jamal Mosley. I think Jamal Mosley is certainly in the crosshairs for the offseason. But regardless, this is still information the Magic can use. This is still something the Magic can analyze. This is still something the Magic can internalize and say, what can we or what did we learn from this experience? The Magic should be thinking these questions. And so I know I said this a million times during the taking years when it's just like, well, you got to evaluate what you have on the roster. This Magic team is still young enough that every time you step on the floor, it tells you something. It informs your decision making. This might feel like a lame duck final 29 games. I would not call you crazy to make it feel that way. It does feel like this team, in order to reach the potential that they thought they had at the beginning of the season, in order to fill in gaps that they think they need to fill in order to be the title contender they want to be, it does feel like the Magic are going to have to make some changes and evaluate some things and can't just say, oh, we're fine. It's just injuries, run it back. I don't think injuries are a huge problem. Injuries are probably the reason why the Magic are in 7th instead of fighting for 4th. But there are bigger issues here than injuries. The problem, though, is that the Magic are very much tied into this core. It was, frankly, my biggest takeaway from what Jeff Weltman told us after the trade deadline. Because Jeff Weltman was talking about big picture items. He said, in plain terms, if we wanted to do anything significant, we would have had to trade away one of our 4 core players. And that is something that I think rightfully he was unwilling to do, not until we saw it together more often. Now, I argued this after the deadline. I will continue to argue this. Jeff Weltman is wrong in one respect. There are smaller things the Magic could have done to shore things up. I am sure they were out there, unless they completely overvalue their players, which maybe they do, which you always overvalue your own players. The Magic have to be willing to do smaller moves that could pay big dividends on the margins. And the Magic's inability to hit on these things on the margins probably cost them a chance to get better in the short term, a chance to make something of this season. Again, maybe it was a hesitancy knowing that, oh, we're planning big changes this offseason. We want to hold our water for that. Maybe that was the case, and maybe I'll eat my words and say, oh, yeah, it was right not to do that deal at the deadline because this deal came along in the offseason. Certainly, the Desmond Bane trade proved that. But the big takeaway there is that the Magic aren't ready to upset this core. And the fact of the matter is, regardless of what you think, Orlando is essentially married to this core unless things go really wrong. And again, I don't think the Magic are in a spot right now where they want to do these massive changes. In all likelihood, 4 of the 5 starters are going to be Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bane, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero. There is honestly very little reason to move off of it. For all of Banchero's struggles, he's averaging 21.3 points per game and has a career best 55.9% shooting percentage. Should still be better, but he's having a better season than I think a lot of people give him credit for, including maybe myself. There are big issues that he's not hitting, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why the Magic are where they're at. For all of Franz Wagner's injuries, he's also averaging 21.3 points per game. And his three-point shooting recovered to 36.5%. By the way, he doesn't have international duty this summer. Finally, a full summer for him to work on himself. Desmond Bane, for all the struggles he had earlier in the season, is averaging 19.6 points per game and shooting 37.2% from 3, which is low for him. Lowest since his rookie year, I believe. And there's plenty more to unlock with him. And Jalen Suggs is averaging 14.1 points per game. His assists are at a career high. He's one of the best catch-and-shoot shooters in the league, in my opinion. He's making 40.5% on 3.4 three-point attempts per game. In 137 minutes across 13 games, just 13 games of the 53 the Magic have played, the Magic have a plus 11.8 net rating when those 4 players share the floor. It's with a stellar 119.7 offensive rating and even better 107.9 defensive rating. Now, this is not like the best in the league. There are like at least 10 to 12, maybe 15 that have a 20 net rating. But this is also coming off 2 very down games with Franz Wagner returning from the high ankle sprain. Jeff Weltman is right to say we have not seen this group play together long enough to make sweeping conclusions about the quartet and whether they can work. In fact, there is enough data, or there's enough hinting of data to say that they can work and they do work together. It just hasn't been for long enough. And so the question is, can this extend and expand? And that is the question we're going to ask after the All-Star break. And that's why these 29 games are important. We'll talk a little bit about what they need to prove in the final 2 months of the season, plus where the Magic are going to make their move up the standings. We're going to talk about that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to my friends over at FanDuel. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, like maybe the Magic can, I don't know. I'll hype them up. This is the perfect time to lock it in. And now, not only can your pick cash, but it could send you to the finals, which I don't think the Magic will be going to this year. Maybe they will. It's the East. Who knows? Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is also brought to you by our friends over at Quo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal, and it works right from your phone or computer, and you can even keep your existing number. It is no surprise Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses. That's 4 zeros. From solo operators to growing teams. Make this year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo, which also has an O, which is kind of like a zero, for free. Plus, get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonme. That's Quo, QUO.com/lockedonNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. We want to thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't done so already, be sure to check out our Everydayer Club. Get Locked On Magic ad-free with the Everydayer Club, plus members-only Discord access. Join at lockedonmagic.supercast.com. That's lockedonmagic.supercast.com. Or click on the link in the show notes below. Let's make this clear then. Getting to the 6th seed, having a successful finish of the playoffs matters to the Orlando Magic. Maybe you think it's small potatoes, and that's fine. Like, it is small potatoes. It isn't what we set out to do at the beginning of the season. But as I mentioned yesterday, it is what the goal is in front of the team. It is an achievable, substantial goal to achieve over these next 29 games, over these next 2 months. And if you look at the schedule, it feels achievable too. And we'll get to that coming up here in a minute. I do think the Magic, if they could right the ship, if they could be the team we think they could be, they could get to 47 wins. I believe it. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. They're going to have to be really good. But they could still get to 44, 45, 46 wins and give themselves a shot at the 6th seed. I believe it. And I want you to believe it too. We'll talk about that in a minute. But more than anything else, on a big picture scale, it's more important to see the Magic do this, to give us the sense that, oh, we're not that far off. Oh, it was injuries. And all Jeff Weltman has to do in this offseason is injury-proof the roster a little bit better. It is just coaching. Like, the talent's there. And I think we can all sense that, that the talent's there. But something's off with the coaching that's preventing us from getting there. Our new coach will give new ideas and get them over the top or unlock that next level. that they keep bumping their head against. That only happens, and we avoid bigger roster questions, which, Wendell Carter's a big roster question. I'll grant you that is one that the Magic may have to answer this offseason. But we can find out if this is the core or not. Because frankly, the problem right now is that we thought entering the season that this was a championship level team, or that this was a team that was pointing to a championship. Maybe not this year. Maybe they weren't a championship level to this team. And I've said this a million times throughout the year. What we wanted to see this year is that the only thing this group was missing was experience. That they had the talent, they had the ability, and it was just like, oh, they lost to game 5 against the Knicks. Oh, big whoop. That they were competitive with those elite teams, but maybe just not mature enough to beat them quite yet. We can still get there. But we need to see this group come together first. And that is going to be the challenge ahead of the Orlando Magic. Is can they put those pieces together? Can they be that team? And that's the question we don't quite know. That's the question we don't quite know about this group. Because again, the bottom line is this. Paolo Banchero is under contract for 5 years. He earned a max. Whether the manager should give him the super max, whether the manager should have held their water a little bit with that, who knows? But no one was debating that he deserved the same max contract that Franz Wagner got. Well, right now, with the way that he's played and the way this team has struggled, that's looking more like an albatross. And so, yes, like Paolo is going to have to come back next year and prove himself all over again. He can start that process now. He can start that process over the next 29 games. Franz Wagner certainly has to be healthy. Desmond Bane continuing to find himself. Jalen Suggs getting back to full health. What we need to see is that these 4 players who, again, Paolo's under contract for 5 more years. Franz is under contract for 4 more years after this one. Jalen Suggs is under contract for 4 more years after this one. Desmond Bane is under contract for 3 more years. These are the 4 players that are going to keep the Magic in the apron. They're going to keep the Magic in the tax. These are the 4 players the Magic are paying the tax for. Because Orlando owes those 4 players next year alone $155.1 million. And that's an estimate because we don't know Paolo's salary yet. The salary cap next year is expected to be 166. Agree or disagree with it? And again, I think the Magic made, we can argue about Jalen Suggs' contract. It's front-loaded. It'll decrease over time. Franz, I think, has earned his max. Paolo earned his max. Desmond Bane is a contract they inherited and again, was worth, at this point, I think was worth the price. Now, this team would be in bigger trouble without him. This core group is the Magic for the next 3 years. After this one, not including this one, the next 3 years after this one. One of the reasons you got Desmond Bane was because he was on a 4-year contract. You didn't have to worry about his contract status for years down the road. He's not a free agent until the summer of 2029, I believe. This is, you built this team because you wanted this team. And if they want to stay playing together, if the Magic don't immediately think like, oh, maybe this was a mistake, they got to start proving it now. Because again, think about the big picture here. Whether Jamal Mosley's the coach or not beyond this year. And look, it's not 50-50. Or it shouldn't. It probably shouldn't be. Like, I think there are still ways for Mosley to save his job, but it's been rough this year. The team isn't responding and playing with the same intensity that they had before. It's been 2.5 months since November, and the way that they were playing in November when they went 10-4 that month, when they had a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense, Mosley hasn't been able to get them back to that level. And again, maybe he will. Maybe this team comes out like gangbusters, finally healthy, and plays the way we always imagined them. And we're like, oh, we need a full healthy season. We need to go in the offseason and shore some things up defensively off the bench to make sure that doesn't happen again. Maybe that is the case. But everything always is going to come back to those 4 players. And I don't sense the Magic are ready to trade those 4 players. They weren't ready to trade them at the deadline, nor should they have been. And I think very clearly Weltman says there's enough to believe. And so if there is something to believe in, they need to show it. We need more data. We need more minutes on the floor together, whether they're with the right coach or not. They need to prove that it's the wrong coach because the talent's there. And in all likelihood, because the Magic can't change those four, that's why they'll change the coach. But they need to keep proving that they are worth investing in, that this is the group that's going to lead the Magic to that next level. And that is what they have to prove in these next 29 games. Again, there is a very small sample, especially over 53 games, a very small sample that tells us, like, yeah, this group's got it. This group can cause some damage. They could work offensively. They could work defensively. Let's try it out. Let's stick with it. There's a little bit of data. We need more. We need to see it more. We need to see it translate into wins so we can properly diagnose what the problems are. I think that this core group is good enough. It is talented enough. Franz will get better in the offseason. Paolo will get better in the offseason. We'll see who else gets better, and we'll see how this team develops. But we got to see it. And that's what they have to prove. And that's why these last 29 games are so important. Getting to the 6 seed, for as small as that is, getting to the 5 seed, for as small as that is, would be a sign that, yes, injuries were the problem, and there is something the Magic can build on with this group. I got 2 things to hit in the final segment. We'll talk about where the Magic will make their move, the 2 important stretches in the schedule remaining, plus the new signing for the Orlando Magic. We'll introduce him briefly coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by friends over at Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Sponsored Jobs from Indeed. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I'll be reading this ad, companies like yours make 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. And when you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Like I said yesterday, I think for the Orlando Magic to get to the 6th seed, they're going to need 45 or 46 wins. 45 wins means they are 17-12. 47 wins is 19-10. And I think if they get to 47, they will guarantee themselves that they'll avoid the play. And I don't think Philadelphia's going to get there, but we shall see. I don't think both Philadelphia and Toronto will get to 47. Let me put it that way. The Magic are currently on pace for 43 wins. The Sixers are currently on pace for 44 wins or 45 wins. So it's going to be tight. And I would say this. I went through the schedule game by game. I was like, okay, this is a game that is a toss-up. Could go 50-50. Depends on how they're playing, how the other team's playing. These are the games they got to win. I have 11 must-win games against teams that are below them in the standings. Again, I'm not expecting – I think I marked them all down as wins. But I think you go, 8-3 in those games or 9-2, you're in really good shape. You could get half of the wins that you need just by beating up on teams that are below you in the standings. I have 11 toss-up games, and I think it ended up being like 6 games that were just like, yeah, they're probably going to lose that game. And 2 of them are to Cleveland, one's at Minnesota, like those kinds of games. There are two stretches remaining this season that I think are going to tell us a lot about whether the Magic can make this push or not. And the first one is actually right out of the gate. This 4-game West Coast trip, and I said this before the last homestand, but this 4-game West Coast trip is humongous. These first 8 games out of the break have pitfalls. I could see the Magic going 5-5 or 6-4. I could also see them going 8 these first 8 games out of the break. I could see the Magic going 4-4. I could see them going 3-5. I could see them going 5-3. I could see them going 6-2. There is a lot on the line right out of the gate, and they got to set the tone for the rest of the season with these first 8 games. Now, remember back before the last homestand, I said over the 12 games, including the 4-game homestand before the break, the Magic needed to go 8-4. They're 3-1. Again, winning all of them would have put you halfway to that 8-4 mark. They're 3-1. Plenty fine. Plenty okay there. These next 4 games are going to be really difficult. Winnable, but difficult. Now, I will tell you for the next 2 days, the Sacramento game scares me. Sacramento's on a 14-game losing streak. The first game out of the All-Star break is always weird. The Magic flew out to Sacramento on Tuesday. They're practicing in Sacramento on Wednesday for the first practice since the All-Star break ended. Those first games after the break are always a little screwy. This is not a game you can afford to lose. Sacramento is an easy win. You've got both games against the Kings after the break. Both those games need to be wins. You need to take care of your business and put down a team that is struggling right now, that doesn't have a lot of faith in what they're doing. Then you go to Phoenix, a team that is really good defensively. And I'm not poo-pooing Phoenix. I'm not telling you to sleep on Phoenix, but that's a winnable game, even with Devin Booker, even if Jalen Green's back. That is a winnable game, but it's not a short thing. It's one of my toss-up games. If Orlando gets that game, that's a good thing. Then you go to the Clippers on a back-to-back. I think that's a tough game. I don't know what the Clippers are going to look like. Kawhi Leonard's playing like an MVP. They are tougher than they look. And then you finish that road trip off with the Lakers. Again, Lakers are a tough team. Lakers are a team that has the star power, and that's always good enough to get you going. But they have their own weaknesses, and they have their own struggles, and they are very beatable. They're pretty mid, too. They're like the opposite of the Magic, where they've been winning games despite being pretty mid, where the Magic have been kind of being mid. All 4 of those games are winnable. All 4 of those games are losable, even the Sacramento game. And so these first 4 games are going to tell us how focused the Magic are. Now, the 4 games on the homestand coming up after that are also quite difficult. And is another really interesting opportunity. The Magic return home February 26th. That's 1 week from Thursday to face the Houston Rockets. The Rockets play Sacramento the night before in Houston. So Orlando does have a rest advantage, but first game back from a West Coast trip, always kind of screwy too. True toss-up game. I can see the Magic winning that game, beating a team on a back-to-back. I can see them losing that game. Who knows? The Pistons game on March 1st. Magic have 2 days off between games. They have a little rest advantage. The Pistons play the Thunder, the Cavs, the Magic, and then the Cavs again. Could be the kind of game they sneak a win, and Orlando matches up well with Detroit, but that'll be a humongous challenge. Then they finish that homestand with Washington and Dallas, 2 games that should be wins. Then they get a huge game March 14th at Miami. Then the Hawks on March 16th on the road. Then they come home to play the Thunder, and that's where we'll stop doing the schedule from there. Those are the first 14 games after the break, if I mathed correctly, which maybe I didn't. The first 4 are critical. Starting off 2-2, when you go on a West Coast trip, you hope to break even. And so if the Magic can go 2-2, beat Sacramento, beat one other team, that's a victory. Just tread water, get home. Win 3 of 4 on that homestand. And again, 2-2, that gets you to 8-4. That was my goal for those 12 games. And then you're kind of off to the races. The other stretch that I'm really looking at is in late March. I'm going to go ahead and say starting March 21st. against the Lakers. And March is very busy. The Magic, I think, play 17 games in 31 days. March 21st, they play the Lakers at home. Not an easy game. March 23rd, they play the Pacers at home. Should be a win. March 24th at Cleveland. Not betting anything on Cleveland. Tough back-to-back going from Orlando to Cleveland. And they'll be rested for that one, so I'm not optimistic about that Cavs game. March 26th, you get the Kings at home. March 29th is that huge game against the Raptors that I talked about yesterday. Huge game, 6-pointer. Got to win that game. I think Orlando's done well with Toronto this season. March 31st, you play the Suns. April 1st, you play the Hawks. April 3rd, you play the Mavericks at Dallas. April 5th, at New Orleans. And you come home April 6th to play Detroit. We're going to leave that game out for now. That leads into the last two home games, Detroit, Minnesota, on April 6th and 8th. That stretch is where the Magic need to pick up some wins because they're going to play some teams that are very beatable. Atlanta, Dallas, New Orleans, Sacramento. The last stretch of easy games the Magic have all year long. And so the Magic are going to be able to pick up, I think the Magic should be able to pick up some steam in late March. I'm not saying tread water until then. I'm saying you gotta win games. Like, you can't just tread water anymore. You got to win games. And that's the task ahead of the Magic. So the two areas of the schedule I'm looking at the rest of the season, right out of the chute, these next 8 games, right out of the chute, really important to do well over the next 2 weeks. Then I'm looking at late March. Really important to play well in late March, heading into April, so that, again, you're peaking at the right time, which the Magic typically do, but you're picking up wins and maybe at that point building a cushion because your end of your schedule is really tough. Detroit, Minnesota at home, then at Chicago, at Boston. And who knows if Boston's going to need that last game. The Magic certainly will. The Magic, I think, will be playing to the last day of the season. And if they're playing the last day of the season, that means they did something right. That means they are fighting for something and not surviving. So that's the case. I have it in the rundown, so I want to get to it very, very briefly. I don't feel like we need to spend a lot of time on the G League, on the two-way guys, but Orlando did make a roster move before they headed out to Sacramento. The Magic waived Orlando Robinson, who was their two-way player, started a game in Boston earlier in the season, played only 4 games. They signed Alex Morales. Alex Morales has been with the Magic. He was in their on their training camp roster the last 2 years. He's been with Osceola the last 3 years. He's played 18 games this season, averaging a career high 19.2 points per game in the G League's regular season, 7.9 rebounds per game. He's shooting 41.3% from 3. Having this career season, I think Orlando certainly rewarded him for that. All in 18 games. He's shooting 53.1% overall. He's a career 51.4% shooter, only a career 32.9% three-point shooter. So this year does feel like a little bit of an anomaly. This is his first season in the G League, and the G League regular season, at least, averaging more than 10 points per game. In the tip-off tournament back in November, he averaged 12.6 points per game, shot 38.8% from 3, and 50% overall with 7 rebounds per game. This is a guy who has worked really, really hard. He's a wing player. He's not a big. He's someone that's been with the Magic and in the Magic program for a little while now. He's listed at 6'6", 195. So again, like a guy that has some size, that plays a little bit bigger than he is, that the Magic typically like. I have no problem with them adding another wing in their two-way. They certainly need another wing and need another player who can help on the perimeter. Jamal Cain is a little bit on the small side. I don't know why they opted to make this move. Maybe Colin Castleton's ready to go now, and so they don't need the extra big. I'm theorizing a little bit that Orlando Robinson has a deal somewhere for a 10-day and want to go somewhere that he would play. And the Magic are usually pretty amenable with agents to let players do that. But the Magic have a new two-way player. We'll see if he adds anything to this team. You know, I could do my two-way rant a little later on. But this is kind of how I think you should be using your two-way spots on players that you've developed in your system and are giving an opportunity. So I am interested to see what Alex Morales can do. Again, I don't expect him to stick on the roster. I don't expect him to be kind of a long-term player. Has no NBA experience, so the Magic could sign him to two-way this year, sign him to two-way next year, and be okay on that. But he's earned an opportunity. He's been really good for Osceola this year. So we'll see if he adds anything to the Magic, if he supplants Jamal Cain or what the case might be. We'll see if the Magic end up using him or not because, you know, they're healthy now. They don't need their two-way players as much as they did maybe a month ago. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Hemo, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the places alone podcasts to your podcast enables a device. You can check us out on YouTube as well. Just search for Locked On Magic. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. Also, be sure to check out our Everydayer Club at lockedonmagic.supercast.com. That's lockedonmagic.supercast.com. You get access to an ad-free audio feed of this podcast, plus access to the Locked On Discord server to interact with other Magic fans, as well as the wider Locked On NBA world. For those of you on video, we're going to send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen NBA game night on Locked On NBA. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about how the Magic are preparing for the sprint to the finish line here and the end of the NBA season as the All-Star break officially ends and the Magic finally get on the practice court once more. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.